Sandy McDonald. I'm the Director of the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, and thank you for joining us for this triennial, I'm going to call it this triennial conversation. So as you know or don't know, the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, on behalf of Broward County, we administer a local small business program, SBE Small Business Enterprise, CBE County Business Enterprise. But we also administer on behalf of the federal government, specifically Department of Transportation, DOT. We administer the 49 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, Part 2623, which is actually our DBE and ACDBE program. As a part of those requirements on the FTA side, the FAA side, we're required to have a listening session, a hearing session, a conversation. We're required to explain as we do the triennial goal planning. Share that information with active DBEs, proposed DBEs, folks who just want to be informed and aware of who we are and what we're doing. And that's what my team's going to do today. I'm just here to let you know I also serve as the DBELO, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Liaison Officer, and I'm the one who's supposed to assure that the program that the Broward County administers, we administer it according to the Code of Federal Regulations, that the program that we administer with the spirit and the intent of working with disadvantaged and socially and economically disadvantaged business enterprises, and that everything we do is designed to recruit eligible DBEs, certify those eligible DBEs, train and develop those eligible DBEs, and work with our county agencies who use DOT money to make sure we can establish and place DBE goals on projects. So today, with my new little twist called listening session, is going to be your opportunity to ask questions, to hear from staff, to learn more about the program, learn more about the goals and what we're looking to do over the next 3 years. But it's certainly, for some of you, a chance to get to know us in case you haven't known us previous to this meeting today. So I think that is exactly what they wanted me to share as an introduction. I do know when I'm done, they want you to watch this video we have that'll explain a little bit more about the program. So thanks for joining us today and welcome.
Program.
The Department of Transportation distributes substantial federal funds to finance transportation projects initiated by state and local governments, public transit authorities, and airport entities. The DOT is responsible for ensuring that all business enterprises have a fair opportunity to compete for federally funded transportation contracts. The Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, DBE program, is the DOT's strongest tool for creating a level playing field. The DBE program began in 1980 as a minority and women's business enterprise program. The program was established under the authority of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits racial, ethnic, and national origin discrimination, and other statutes prohibiting gender discrimination that apply to DOT financial assistance programs. Congress has reauthorized the DBE program several times since its inception. Most recently, Congress established a continued need for the DBE program in the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act. As a condition of receiving federal financial assistance, recipients of funds from the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Aviation Administration, and Federal Transit Administration are required to follow the DBE program regulations located in 49 CFR, Parts 26 and 23. The Departmental Office of Civil Rights coordinates the department's oversight of the program. These three operating administrations, FHWA, FAA, and FTA, are primarily responsible for overseeing the day-to-day administration of the program by recipients, providing training and technical assistance, and enforcing compliance. The DBE program remedies ongoing discrimination and the continuing effects of past discrimination in federally assisted transportation contracting markets nationwide. The day-to-day administration of the DBE program is carried out by recipients of federal funds at the state and local level. This includes approximating how much participation is expected from DBEs by setting an annual overall DBE goal that represents the level of participation anticipated absent the effects of present and past discrimination. Recipients must set an overall goal for DBE participation and monitor results to foster non-discriminatory environments and ensure that DBEs have an equal opportunity to compete fairly. The DBE program isn't a quota or set-aside program. Instead, it's based on narrowly tailored goals and participation by prime contractors, subcontractors, and agency partners. Certification of eligible firms is a key component of the DBE program. But what is a DBE? A disadvantaged business enterprise is a for-profit small business. At least 51% of the business is owned by one or more individuals who are both socially and economically disadvantaged. And the management and daily business operations are controlled by one or more of the socially and economically disadvantaged business owners. Firms meeting the eligibility standards can contact state departments of transportation or state DBE liaison and certification officers for instructions on how to apply for DBE certification. Each state has a unified certification program, UCP, to ensure certification decisions are honored by all recipients in that state. There's also a streamlined interstate certification process for existing DBEs wishing to participate in other states. A firm must be certified to be counted toward a DBE goal. To find out more about the DBE program, how to apply to the program, and other useful contacts, visit the DOT website.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna Ann Knapp. I'm the Small Business Development Manager within the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. And as you just heard from our director, Mr. Sandy Michael McDonald, as well as on the brief video that you just watched, today's meeting or public stakeholder meeting is targeted towards disadvantaged business enterprises, as well as stakeholders that are not certified as disadvantaged business enterprises. This could be non-certified subcontractors, prime contractors, consultants, professional organizations that these firms belong to. We're interested in hearing about the obstacles and the hurdles that you're facing. May I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So as the video told you, our program, Broward County's federal DBE program, our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, is implemented in accordance with the federal regulations governing the program, which is Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 26. All you've heard so far boils down to very simply, Broward County is a recipient of federal grant funding. There are three arms of the United States Department of Transportation which issues these fundings. The national, my apologies. In addition to receiving federal funds, we also issue contracts. So by way of receiving contract funding or federal grant funding from the Federal Aviation Administration or the FAA, the Federal Transit Administration or the FTA, we also issue contracts that are valued at more than $250,000 in prime contracts. And these contracts are going to be awarded in a federal fiscal year. You may be wondering, what is a federal fiscal year? Well, the federal fiscal year mirrors that of Broward County's fiscal year, and it starts on October 1st and ends on September 30th. So the period of time that we're reviewing today is for fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. You may be wondering why I didn't mention the third arm of the US DOT, and that is because we don't currently receive direct grant funding from the Federal Highway Administration. So for the purposes of today's meeting, we're going to be focusing on projects that we anticipate receiving federal grant funding from the FAA and the FTA on upcoming Broward County projects that will be solicited between October 1st of 2022, which is the start of fiscal year 23, through September 30th of 2025, which is the end of fiscal year 2025. And again, we receive these grant funds. So as a requirement under the federal regulations, we need to consult with you, the stakeholders. May I have the next slide, please? I wanted to mention, just as a side note, if there's anyone who's watching right now that thinks, okay, this is a Broward County meeting, it may only apply to firms in Broward County. The DBE program is a federal program, and by virtue of that, firms from all across the country are allowed to participate. And we do have an interstate certification program. So if there's something that you're interested in that we're talking about, but you're not currently certified as a vendor through the DBE program in the state of Florida, and you're located in another state, you can always apply through interstate certification. Now, I mentioned we're going to be receiving federal grant funds in the next 3 fiscal years. You can see them again on the slide. And we are going to be issuing, as you're going to be hearing from my colleagues, they're going to be talking about the proposed goals and the methodology that went behind the proposed goals for these 3 fiscal years. And this is going to be the program goal, not to be confused with the project goal. This is an overall goal for the next 3 years based on the projects that are transit projects that are going to be receiving FTA grant funding, as well as aviation projects from both of Broward County's airports, the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport and North Perry Airport, as well as transit projects. So we welcome your input. Please listen to what it is that's coming up in the next 3 years. If you have any information regarding availability, obstacles, anything that might not be creating a level playing field on which DBEs can compete, or is not in the spirit of promoting the program, we welcome your input. Please feel free to let us know. You will get an opportunity during the Q&A at the end of the session, as well as you can submit information afterwards to us if something occurs to you later on. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn over to my colleagues, James Vos and Ketsia Harrigan. Ketsia is going to be talking to you about the upcoming projects used for the methodology for the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ketsia Harrigan, Small Business Development Specialist here at Broward County Aviation. I'm going to discuss the Broward County Triennial Goals for the aviation projects here at Fort Lauderdale and Hollywood International Airport. Next slide, please. So the proposed triennial goal, Dbe goal, for Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport was 20.93%. And there were 2 projects with potential Dbe participations. Next slide, please. For the areas that were considered for the calculation for this proposed goal, we used the Nexus codes, and we identified all the DBEs for these projects, these 2 projects. And looking in our Florida's DBE directory, within the tri-state, tri-county in the state, Broward, as well as Palm Beach and Miami-Dade, there were 133 DBE firms that were identified. And the availability of all firms, DBEs as well as non-DBEs, were in these counties. We also extracted data from the Census Bureau for the county business pattern, and we noticed that there were 2,484 firms that were identified. Next slide, please. We also took into consideration the race-neutral attainment by Broward County for the past 5 years. And based on the previous 5-year data, Broward County measured the race-neutral participating by committing participation that were made to the DBEs in excess of the established goals. After removing the fiscal years of 2017, 2020, as well as 2021, there were no projects awarded for these fiscal years. The median value was less than the established goal, and we came up with the median value of negative 1.6%. Therefore, there were no race-neutral participation for the anticipated years of fiscal year 2023 through 2025. The entire Dbe goal of 20.93% will be attained via race-conscious means for Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. And now I'll have my colleague, James Vos. He will talk to you about our other airport, North Perry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Vos, and I am also a small business development specialist here at Aviation. And I was charged with lead person with the methodology for, I'd like to say, call it our additional airport, because we have 2 airports here in Broward County for the North Perry Airport. And North Perry Airport is really, I consider it like a reliever airport with a primary concentration on business and private flights. So with that being said, the proposed Triennial Dbe goal was 23.82%. And that was based on 4 upcoming projects with potential Dbe participation for prime and subcontractors. Next slide, please. Okay, as far as developing that goal, we have areas that we consider for the calculation, or these are resources that we identified and we use on a regular basis that we incorporated for the calculation of the overall goal. And for those 4 projects, we use what is known as the NACIS codes, or the North American Industry Classification codes that are used to identify the different trades for prime contractors as well as specialty trades. And out of those, we look for the identification of our disadvantaged business enterprises. Now, Diane discussed previously that the DBE, or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Directory, is a national directory. But as far as the concentration of the population that we use what is known as the South Florida-based DBE firms, which are DBE firms identified in Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade counties. And that number was 156 DBE firms. The next thing is what is known as the Census Bureau's county business patterns. Now that is the whole universe. That includes disadvantaged business enterprises as well as non-certified businesses. And that number calculated to 2,484 firms. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we calculate the goal, we have areas considered for calculation of the proposed goal. And basically, when you calculate an overall goal, you have an approach, and it's developed by 2 means. It's called race neutral attainment and race conscious attainment. I like to say the approaches are more or less intentional and unintentional, and I explain. Basically, your race neutral attainment is how DBE attainment is accomplished in the open market, meaning projects that you have no DBE goals for, but DBEs either win the award successfully with competitions with small businesses in general in the area, and that participation is counted. Now, as far as conscious, that's intentional participation, where we review the project and we earmark specific areas or trades based upon the DBE firms that we have certified. For this particular goal, that attainment is based on the last 5-year history of data that we have of DBEs landing contracts through intentional goals or through the open market. Now for this one, it was done over a 5-year basis, but I don't have to tell you guys, it hasn't been normal over the past 3 years because of the pandemic. So due to that, you don't have your normal concentration or project award. Those years were removed in order to determine what a regular market would be. And based upon that, 2 of those years were counted. And we did an average calculation based upon that to determine our race neutral participation, which is 6.75. Okay, the race conscious portion of that is actually the overall goal, which is 23.82 minus that 6.75, which in this case equals 17.07. So that's how you calculate your intentional versus unintentional participation for the overall goal. And thank you. Moving right along.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Gasser Duget from the Broward County Aviation Department to give an overview of the scope of services for the upcoming projects, both at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport as well as North Perry Airport. Gasser?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gasser Duget with Broward County Aviation Department with the Airport Development Division. And I'll be speaking to you about the projects that will receive FAA funding and hence will have a DBE goal attached to them. These are the projects that James and Ketsia spoke of. Next slide. Next slide. So the list of projects that we will be talking about include Taxiway Alpha rehabilitation at FLL and Taxi Lane Tango at FLL. At HWO, we have the runway 10 right, 28 left rehab. That's the second phase of that rehab. And we have another project called Mitigation of Hotspots 1 and 3. And we have Taxiway M rehabilitation, and we have the mitigation of runway 1 left crossings. Next slides, please. So at FLL, Taxiway Alpha is the most northern taxiway on the airfield. As you can see, it's highlighted in blue. And basically, the rehab, that taxiway was constructed. The last rehabilitation occurs in the 2005, most likely. And at this time, it is in need of rehab. The project will include what you can see here in blue, the scope of work, milling, MOT, earthwork, paving, markings, and electrical work. We have broken down the components of the NAICS codes that you'll see here. We have the general conditions, the maintenance of traffic, the asphalt pavement milling, the lime rock base, the full depth replacement in some areas, and of course the surface course paving. Also, there'll be markings, there'll be sodding, and then there'll be some electrical improvement. The anticipated cost of the project at this time, it's a planning estimate. Given the rise in cost, we will validate that cost again. And we anticipate a solicitation date in the 3rd or 4th quarter of 2024. At this time, we will be getting designers on board, probably in the 4th quarter of this year. And based on that, we will be issuing them notice to proceed to start the design process. Once the design process is completed, then we'll go out to bid and we'll be soliciting contractors, bids from contractors. Next slide. We're going to, if you have questions, if you want to raise your hand, and if you have any questions on the slide, let me know. We will entertain your questions as we move along. The next rehabilitation project that we have at FLL is called Taxi Lane Tango Rehab. It's shown also highlighted in the blue area. And this one is a little bit more complex because, as you can see, it wraps around the terminals at FLL. And during this rehab, phasing will be very important since it will have an impact on aircraft operations getting in and out of the terminals. So that project is going to be a very critical project for FLL. Again, this taxi lane is basically all showing a lot of distresses. So we will be having replacement, reconstruction, and rehabilitation, as you can see there in the scope of work. And the anticipated costs, again, these are planning. This is a planning cost. It's about $8 million, but I think this is probably going to go up given what we have. We are doing a level planning phase verification for the rehab, and we've seen a lot of depression on the field. So we anticipate this cost to be reviewed and probably will go up. And as you can see again with the NAICS codes, these are the anticipated breakdown that we will have for the project. Solicitation time, we anticipate first or second quarter of 2024. Again, all of that will be coordinated with operations and maintenance at FLL, so that we do it at an opportune time where we have the least impact on traffic at the airport. Next slide, please. Now we go to North Ferry. I believe those are the projects that James spoke of also. What you can see here, the view of North Ferry is a North Ferry that has been rehabbed completely. This project is the rehab of runway 10 right, 28 left. That's the one highlighted in green. That's also a runway that was the last rehab 16 years ago. And we anticipate the rehabilitation to include lighting, replacement, milling, paving, of course, phasing, because this is one of the main runway. As you can see, FLL has about 4 runways, 2 east and west runway and 2 north and south runway. 10 right, 28 left is one of the major east and west runway. So phasing will be also important since this is a primary runway at the airport. We anticipate solicitation to be around the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter of 2025. The anticipated cost for the rehab is about $4 million. And as you can see, this is the breakdown of the general specialty for the project. Next slide. Thank you, please. The 3rd project at North Ferry that is considered for DBE is what we call the mitigation of hotspots 1 and 3. A hotspot is an area where a potential incursion can occur, creating an accident on the airfield. So we will have to mitigate the hotspots so that we prevent that from happening. The hotspot number 3 is the one that you see near runway 10 left. So we will have to demolish the asphalt and probably will have some sodding and then do anything that may have an impact. That's hotspot number 1, actually. Anything that may have an impact on the runway itself. So that may include some paving as well. And as you can see at the bottom, near 10 right, there is also hotspot number 3, and everything that's shown in red will have an impact, will be either demolished or repaved accordingly in accordance with all the FAA requirements. As you know, we have FAA funding. All the projects will be in accordance with FAA standards and FAA requirements. As you can see also the specialty, main scope of work, demolition, paving, striping, and maintenance of traffic. Anticipated solicitation date, 1st quarter, 2nd quarter of 2025, and the potential cost, $1.9 million. Any questions or comments? If not, we move on to the next slide. Thank you. Next slide is the taxiway M. Taxiway M is a taxiway that is north of the runway that we just spoke of before. Taxiway M was also constructed around the same time as the runway, so the last rehab. So this one will include a rehab of that taxiway M shown in yellow. And the scope of work is very similar to the other projects. They are all airfield projects: milling, paving, phasing, striping, lighting, earthwork, maintenance of traffic. The cost of this project is anticipated to be about $1.5 million. And what you see on the screen includes the NAICS codes and the major specialty breakdown that you see there. And those would be the 4 projects for North Ferry and the 2 projects that I spoke of before for FLL. Next slide. That's the crossing. That's the last one. Mitigate runway 1 left and 19 right crossings. What you see in orange would include the scope of the project, where we would have demolition, new pavement, lighting as necessary, maintenance of traffic, and the anticipated cost for this project is about $3.7 million. As an airfield project, that's the same kind of breakdown that you've seen before, with the NAICS codes and the percentage of the for the category that you see there. I believe that's about it, right? That's the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Gasser.
If there are any questions, let me know and I will respond. Thank you.
We do have a designated Q&A session at the very end.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll allow the questions to come in for all the information that's been presented, whether on the program, the projects, the goal, and we'll address them all at that time. This will allow us to get through the rest of the presentation and allow enough time at the end for Q&A. So at this time, I'll ask Oswaldo Casco, who is our Small Business Development Supervisor in the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, to present the transit proposed methodology and goal.
Thank you, Donan. Good afternoon. My name is Oswaldo Casco, as Donan stated. I'm a Small Business Development Supervisor here with the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. I'm going to be discussing the methodology that we use to obtain the triennial goal for transit projects projected to be solicited during the triennial period 2023 through 2025. Next slide, please. For the next round of funding, the Office of Economic and Small Business Development originally evaluated 42 transit projects, which will be solicited sometime between 2023 and 2025. The original proposed overall Dbe goal calculated and advertised on these projects was 6.61%, where certified DBEs will have potential opportunities to bid and participate as prime contractors and subcontractors. Prior to this meeting, however, we were informed that one of the 42 projects will be solicited and awarded by the purchasing director this summer. This project has been removed from our original calculation, but its removal has a very nominal impact, resulting in a revised overall DBE goal of 6.56% on the remaining 41 projects. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned by my aviation team, several areas were taken into consideration for the calculation of the DBE goal on the projects that will be solicited during the triennial period 2023 and through 2025. These areas are specifically related to the availability of DBE firms, the Tri-County area, and historical DBE participation on past solicited projects by Broward County. To determine DBE availability for the 41 projects, transit projects, I might emphasize, OESBD used the North American Industry Classification System codes for the scopes of work pertaining to all these projects. With the codes, we were able to identify approximately 3,723 certified DBE firms in the Tri-County area who are listed in the Florida Department of Transportation's DBE directory and who can potentially bid on these projects and becomes prime contractors or DBE subcontractors. Also with the codes, we obtain data from the Census Bureau's county business pattern to assess the availability of DBEs and non-DBEs in the Tri-County area. We found approximately 63,198 firms altogether, with DBEs representing just about 6% of this number. Next slide, please. Another area we took into consideration for the calculation of the goal for these 41 transit projects is the Dbe median participation attainment on past projects. The Dbe median participation attainment includes contracts awarded to DBEs as primes and contracts with DBE subcontractors. This office, the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, evaluated this participation based on awarded contracts over the last 5 years and found that the median attainment percentage is 5.89%. As presented on the table, you can see that this number was derived by viewing the DBE participation on awarded contracts in a sequential order from smallest to largest and determining the middle number. Next slide, please. Another historical data used for the calculation of the goal is the race-neutral attainment on transit projects that were solicited in the last 5 years. Race-neutral refers to contracts that were solicited with no DBE goal requirements and awarded to DBE contractors. Next slide, please. Finally, to obtain the proposed triennial goal for the 41 transit projects, we added the DBE availability percentage or weight-based goal that resulted from our research. This is just about 7.23% to the historical median percentage, which is 589. And the result was divided by 2. The proposed goal then came up to 6.56%, which is to be divided as follows: 5.03 as race neutral and 1.53% as race conscious. Just to clarify, race neutral means that this portion of the goal is to be met by DBEs being awarded contracts as primes, and race conscious means that this portion of the goal is to be met by DBEs serving as DBE subcontractors on eligible projects. Well, with this, I conclude my presentation and yield now to the web administrator.
Thank you, Osvaldo. At this time, we're going to hear from Aretha Douglas and Yanel Fernandez from the Broward County Transportation Department, and they'll be discussing those projects that Osvaldo briefly mentioned, the transit projects, in the coming triennial period.
All right, thank you,
Ladies.
Donna. Yes, hi, thank you, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yanel Fernandez, and I am a Program Project Coordinator Senior for the Broward County Transit Purchasing Section. And presenting with me is the BCT General Manager of Capital Programs, Aretha Douglas. So to discuss some of Transit's DBE projects for fiscal years 23 through 25, as Osvaldo mentioned, our overall proposed goal for this triennial period is 6.56%, of which 1.53% is anticipated to be attained via race-conscious participation, and then 5.03% via race-neutral participation. Next slide. Thank you. So BCT has about 41 anticipated projects that will be federally funded and may have DBE goals assigned. But for the sake of time, we're not going to be going over all 41, but we'll be focusing on some of our bigger upcoming projects. So first, we're going to go over the contracting opportunities for our capital programs division, and I'll let Aretha take over the next couple slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanel. we have the 5 projects that will be shown, 5 projects that will be shown in the next 2 slides. The first project that we're anticipating awarding in fiscal year 2023 is a construction engineering inspection services contract that's valued at 1.9 million. That contract will oversee construction activities under our capital program. It will also, of course, oversee and monitor some transit infrastructure improvements on our bus stops, bus shelters, at our transit facilities, and other transit assets in our system. The second project is a professional services contract for architectural engineering services for remodeling and renovations at or transit facilities, in addition to construction of new facilities. That contract will include work such as site surveying, project scheduling, cost estimating, site and infrastructure design for various improvements. In addition, we'll also include construction administration and other project support activities and services that will need in support of various contracts. Currently, we have ongoing design activities at our Copens Road facility that's located in Pompano Beach. We anticipate putting a contract out in fiscal year 2024 for the renovation and rehabilitation of that facility, valued at $17 million in federal funding. That work will include site construction, stormwater drain renovation and upgrade, structural steel and precast elements, concrete work, roofing replacement and installation. Will also include site lighting, CCTV monitoring, drywall installation, and other electrical and solar components that will tie into our electrification of our site for our electric bus fleet. In addition, we'll also include metal framing and utility coordination. Next slide, please. Also, for fiscal year 2023, we anticipate advertising a miscellaneous transit infrastructure improvement contract valued up to $1 million. That will include miscellaneous engineering services, architectural services, and various industrial and commercial building construction at our various facilities countywide. In addition, we also have proposed bus stop infrastructure improvement contract that will be advertised in fiscal year 2023, valued at 1.3 million. We'll be replacing existing bus stop signs, removal installation of bus stop poles, replacing displaced asphalt pavement, sidewalk, landscaping, and irrigation, and other miscellaneous type work at our on-street bus stop infrastructure in the public right-of-way. We'll also include utilities coordination and shelter evaluation and assessment. Thanks, Janelle. Back to you on this for the rest of the slides.
Thank you, Aretha. So next slide, please. All right, so next is our Services Strategic Planning Division. And for this triennial period, they have one major DBE project, which is the automatic passenger counters, and that's estimated at $315,000. And these are hardware devices that are placed on our buses to count the number of passengers boarding and alighting the bus at a given location. So the contract includes the purchase of software and hardware, the installation on the vehicles, maintenance and support services of that software, as well as training to BCT staff. Next slide. Our operations division has multiple projects that will be federally funded and will have DBE goals. The first being our bus midlife overhaul rehab program. And bus maintenance is seeking a vendor who will be responsible for maintenance and repairs and replacements of parts, material, and equipment. painting and decal repairs, as well as transporting our vehicles to and from any of our transit facilities. Next, and that one's estimated to be about 7.4. I'm sorry, go back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. So that one's estimated to be $7.4 million. The next one is preventative maintenance parts and supplies. That's estimated at $19 million. And this is primarily for the purchase of bus parts and materials for our transit buses. And that includes new, original equipment manufacture, rebuild, and aftermarket parts. And then we have our transmissions for transit buses, and that's estimated at $585,000. And the work to be included for this is the purchase of new and remanufactured transmissions, as well as transmission repairs, purchase of repair parts, as well as transmissions and powertrain rebuilds. Next slide. Our operations division also has a bus tire leasing contract opportunity that will be coming out, and that's pretty self-explanatory. We're looking for tire dealers to provide tire leasing and full services for transit buses. Next is our Cummings engines rebuild and exchange program. That's a $13.5 million one. And for this contract, we're seeking an authorized Cummings service facility vendor who can provide the repair, rebuild, exchange, and maintenance services on existing Cummings engines to maintain the factory warranty coverage that are on the engines. And lastly, operations will be purchasing support vehicles, shop equipment. We're budgeted for $1.1 million in support vehicles and about $800,000 in shop equipment. Next slide. And last but not least, we have several contracting opportunities related to information technology. The first being the APC air handler maintenance and support for our Copen server room. And this contract is for the maintenance of our rack cooling system. And the work to be included in this is repair and maintenance services, inspection, preventative maintenance, as well as purchasing replacement parts as needed. Secondly, we have our computer-aided dispatch automatic vehicle locators, which is our CAD-AVL system replacement. And the work to be provided includes implementing a new CAD-AVL system to manage our fixed route buses and our community buses. So in addition to the hardware for this one, we're also going to need maintenance and support services for the CAD-AVL, hosting related services, and data processing. And the third on this slide is our maintenance and support services for Motorola voice and data communication system. So this includes maintenance support services for our voice and data communications hardware, software, and firmware. Currently, the BCT radio system is a 470 MHz public safety spectrum, which is also referred to as a T-band spectrum. Next slide. We have next is our onboard video surveillance system maintenance and support services. We'll be looking for a contractor to provide preventative maintenance services and corrective maintenance services for our interior and exterior digital bus signage, as well as our head signs, our infotainment systems in the buses, and our video brand surveillance equipment that's on our bus fleet. We also have a transit route planning software that we are going to be procuring for, and this is for a software as a service. So we're looking for a transit planning software to support the service planning process and allow for frequent updates to the transit networks. So the services for this is the actual transit planning software system, which is going to let our planners design transit networks and support their planning process from temporary detours, regular service changes, to complete system redesigns, or coordinated community outreach. And then lastly, we have our closed circuit television system installation, repair support, and preventative maintenance service contract. And we're going to be searching for a vendor to provide service, repair, support, maintenance, and installation of CCTV equipment and systems that's located at various BCT locations. Next slide. So As already mentioned, BCT has quite a lot of contracting opportunities this triennial period. And since we're not able to discuss all 41 of them for the sake of time, listed out are all the projects and when we anticipate them to be advertised. I do want to highlight a few that will be advertised very soon. So please keep a lookout for these. And those are first our construction, engineering, and inspection service contract. And listed are the NAICS code too. Second is our A&E professional services for remodeling, renovation, and new construction. Next slide. The third one that's going to be, the third one that's currently out actually is our transmission for transit buses. That's currently out in the street and it's closing soon. The NAICS code are listed there. And we have our APC air handler maintenance and support for the Copen server room. That's going to be coming out soon too. Next slide. And the third one that's going to be out probably within the next month or two is our maintenance support services for our Motorola voice and data communication systems. So with that, I would like to thank OESBD for hosting this event and allowing BCT the opportunity to share some of our upcoming projects. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aretha and Yanel. If we'll advance to the next slide, I think we have a very, very brief survey. If we could get your feedback on, I don't know if that link is live. Yes. Okay. Thank you. You can simply select the radio buttons on your screen, and that's it. And then we'll give that a minute, and then we'll launch into the Q&A portion of today's meeting, at which point we will respond to any questions that you may have.
Hi, Donna Ann. There are, it appears to be 2 questions in the Q&A area. The first question comes from Zoom user, and the question is, how can you make Aries your success story? I think that was somewhat of a promotional inquiry, but the next part 2 of that question is how to apply for grant funding. If anyone would like to field that question.
I'll get started. So the grant funds that we've been referring to throughout this presentation that you've heard my colleagues and I refer to is actually grant funding based on an agreement that Broward County has as a recipient with the United States Department of Transportation, more specifically with the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as with the Federal Transit Administration. So these grants are prescribed for specific projects, capital improvement projects or airport improvement project funds. So there's a certain criteria that the recipients of the federal grant fundings have to meet in order to receive the grant funding from USDOT. However, it's not the same relationship as with, let's say, an individual owner of a company that might be looking for grant funding to grow a business. This is on a slightly larger scale. I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly. If I did not, please feel free to follow up in the chat.
Thank you, Donna Ann. The next question comes from Victor Harris. His question is, I don't know if my question got noticed. However, I have not heard any professional service opportunities in these DBE states projects. Are there any DBE goals for project/construction management or CEI on these opportunities? Anyone?
Donna, this is Aretha Douglas from Transit. That question may have come in before our presentation because Transit had shared in our slides several of the opportunities referenced in this country in that question, specifically the CEI contract that we plan on putting out in 2023, advertised 2020, summer 2022, and anticipate an award in 2023 is was mentioned earlier. So that's an opportunity for Mr. Harris. There's also other projects that we spoke about, or the anticipated projects we expect to put out. That includes professional services and project and construction management activities, or other contract that we mentioned, FTA funded RFP for professional services will include construction management and construction administration as part of the scope.
And from Broward County Aviation, I think there is a CEI solicitation that is currently out on the streets. And you should check on the BidSync and see that is out there. We are requesting bids from, and we will be selecting 3 firms for CEI services.
Thank you, Arithia and Gasser. If I could just piggyback on response on the tail end, I wanted to clarify because there may be some confusion. You're used to Broward County soliciting projects and having project-specific goals assigned to those individual projects. The difference between what we're doing here today and what you'll have on an individual project is we're actually looking at all the projects that we expect to receive funding, federal funding, from the FTA and the FAA. So this would be for FTA planning, capital, operating assistance, and for FAA airport planning or development. We're looking at all the projects collectively. We're treating them as one giant project with opportunities across different disciplines and scopes. And then we're assigning what's called a program goal. So there'll be a program goal assigned for North Perry Airport, because the value of the contracts that we'll be soliciting when we do issue individual contracts will be more than $250,000. We're also doing an overall program goal of all the projects for Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. There's a separate specific goal because we also intend to receive federal funding from the FAA, but we're going to be issuing individual contracts in a fiscal year that exceed $250,000. Similarly, for the transit projects, we looked at the comprehensive list of all opportunities that would be funded by the FTA where we could get Dbe participation, and we assigned an overall program goal. What will happen is after this program goal is assigned, all these projects are rolled up into the program goal. Once we enter that fiscal year, those opportunities then become available. Then we'll assign individual project goals. We'll unbundle them. And throughout the period, the way this is supposed to work is the overall program goal should line up once all the projects are solicited. They should all be a part. They roll up into the program goal. So what we're doing right now is a higher level look. So you wouldn't find a goal, let's say at this stage, an individual project goal for a specific scope like bonding or insurance. However, when the project itself becomes solicited, that could perhaps be, depending on the project itself, that could be one of the areas where a firm that, deals in bonding and insurance could be utilized to provide a service, but that would be more on the project level. Right now, we're talking about different projects, but that are rolling up into an overall program goal.
Thank you, Donna Ann. Our next question comes from Dr. Adrienne Carter. Are there any opportunities for professional development trainers on the project for DBE holders? A follow-up from Victor Harris says aviation in particular.
Vanetta, would you do me a favor and repeat the first part of that question? I missed it, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. Are there any opportunities for professional development trainers on this project for DBE holders?
I don't, what is professional development training? I don't know.
If Dr. Carter would like to clarify, please feel free.
While Dr. Carter may be typing in the chat, I wanted to mention to everyone, there definitely seems to be an interest in the individual projects once those are advertised through our purchasing division and put on the street for responses. All these projects will be advertised through Periscope, which is the online procurement system that Broward County uses. If you are not currently a registered vendor, we invite you to go to our purchasing division's webpage. It's www.broward.org/purchasing. And the first thing on their website is how to become a registered vendor with Periscope S2G. You don't have to be a certified firm to do business with Broward County, but you do have to be a registered vendor. And all upcoming solicitations are advertised for Broward County through Periscope S2G. And while Periscope S2G, I think, does have a few features that it charges for to participate on Broward County contracts, there is no charge or fee associated with that. Just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, Donna Ann. Dr. Carter did clarify and noted training for management, employees, communication, leadership, organizational conflict resolution training, etc. Would any of the agency projects have any of those opportunities affiliated?
No.
None from transit, no.
Not from PCAD, Broward County Aviation either.
Okay, thank you. Next question comes from Shireen Hampton. Can you share the last presentation regarding Motorola voice and data? It was mentioned really fast.
Hi, sorry about that. I can answer that. So the Motorola voice and data contract, that's basically for preventative maintenance and support services and equipment replacement services for BCT's existing Motorola radio system that's currently on our buses. So some of the services for this includes preventative maintenance, troubleshooting, testing these systems, reprogramming, adjusting them, replacing, malfunctioning components. The buses are currently located at 2 of our facilities, either Copens or Ravenswood. And that's about it. It's budgeted for around $895,000.
Thank you, Yanel.
You're welcome.
Our next question comes from James B. Wright. Yeah, hi, he thanks everyone for the presentation. And his question is, any security guard or guard patrol contracts available during the scope?
I'll chime in, Vanetta, really quickly. I did not hear, and I don't think I have seen any projects that specifically call for security guard services. Broward County has had some of those services recently, but through our local program, not through the federal program, also available through Periscope S2G. But what I would suggest, and this is something I've heard our director tell our small businesses very frequently, there are instances where your service may be needed on a project that may not itemize it as something that's expected, and you have to help the prime vendor think outside of the box. I'll give you an example. Let's say we're installing, I don't know, a huge HVAC project. I thought I heard HVAC is one of those things. I know for a while there, copper coiling was being taken left, right, and center. So whereas the scope itself may not call for security guard services, when the project is solicited, it wouldn't be a bad idea to figure out who the prime vendors are who are interested and bring it up to them that, your company provides security guard services and could secure the job site for them. There are some areas where that's needed, but it's not always identified or called out as a line item on the required scope.
Thank you for that clarification, Donna Ann. We have a question here from Victor Harris. How can we increase the size of these goals on the overall programs? Aviation was roughly 23% and transit roughly 5 to 7%. And then there is a follow-up. I may have misunderstood. However, it seemed as if the number of DBE participants in previous years strongly affected the presented goals.
I don't want to monopolize if anybody else wants to chime in. But I can get it started. And then if somebody else wants to comment, I just didn't want the dead silence. I will be honest, it's a reasonable comment when you compare the goals that you've been presented with. So for North Perry, the overall goal for that airport was 23.82%. For Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, that goal was 20.93%. And then for the transit projects, that goal was being proposed at 6.56%. Something to keep in mind is, and it was described by Ketsia, James, and Oswaldo when they went through the overall high-level review of the formulation of the goal, is we look at opportunities of scopes of services that we expect to arise. We never tell the prime vendors that respond which areas to use. So they can, that's why I was saying with the example with the security guard, they can be somewhat inventive, but there are some elements of the scope that we expect will be present, and that never really changes. So we're looking for availability. So the methodology that was used, and there are a couple that USDOT allows us to use. What we did was we looked at the number of available DBE certified firms in what we call our normal market area. And our normal market area is our Tri-County area, which is comprised of Broward County, Palm Beach County, and Miami-Dade County. This is the area in which Broward County typically spends its dollars. Now, I mentioned before, it is a national program, and it is, but we have to have a baseline or a benchmark that we can kind of project and expect this participation from. That doesn't limit DBEs that are certified through the state of Florida to participate on these projects, but it is a benchmark that we use to kind of project based on historical data where we expect the participation to be. So we looked at the number of available DBE certified firms that correlate to the North American Industry Classification System codes. It's a 6-digit NAICS code. It's an industry code. So we're looking at the number of firms that are certified with those NAICS codes. And then we're also looking in the Census County Business Patterns data table, which has a group, a collective group of all businesses. And we're looking for those same NAICS codes. So on one hand, we're looking at DBEs that are certified with these specific NAICS codes. And on the other hand, we're looking at all firms certified with these NAICS codes, all in the same normal market area, our Tri-County area. We divide the number of DBE firms by the number of all firms with those same NAICS codes. We weight the value that we get, and that gives us what we call our base goal. So it's essentially based on availability of certified firms in our normal market area. When we get to the project goals, it is possible, it won't be a huge shift, but we have seen, depending on new firms that are recruited or that get certified, we may have an increase in a certain area where when we formulated the overall program goal, we didn't have that same concentration or number of firms. Another part of the goal formulation that we looked at was historic participation. You may have noticed, I think the comment was about the transit goal being lower than the aviation goal. You may have noticed on one of the slides that Oswaldo showed, when he showed the last 5 years of attainment, it was higher in the earlier of the 2 5 years, but lower in 2020 and 2021. One of the reasons for this, it's an unintended consequence, but it's not a bad thing all the less. Broward County also has what's called a surtax funded program. It's now called MAP Broward officially is the program name, but it was voted on by Broward County residents in November of 2018. And that penny surtax is currently being used for transit projects and for infrastructure. So there are now more competing pools of funding for opportunities for projects. That is tied to our local program. The projected goals for the federal DBE program is tied to funding that we expect to receive from the FTA and the FAA. So at this point in time, based on the availability of DBE firms for those transit projects, and keep in mind, there might be one or two of you in the audience that provide a service, but we're comparing the certified firms by all firms certified in that NAICS code. And that resulting fraction is kind of what's guiding the overall goal that we're establishing. It doesn't mean when we set the project goal that it can't change a little bit, because there are always firms being added. Some firms outgrow the program, so they leave the directory. So it may change a little, but it's because of this new funding source. It's not wholly dependent on FTA funding anymore. We did have a meeting, a conversation, and there may be some additional projects that are introduced later in the triennial period, but those aren't fully cooked yet. And what we'll do is we can update our program goal if those are introduced into the methodology. But that is primarily
Can I
why.
speak?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Althea.
And from the transit side, just to add on to what Donna Ann said about the funding source that transit has, our goal actually is to leverage surtax dollars to use to get additional FTA dollars to add to many of the larger projects that we're looking at. So in this triennial period, we're anticipated potentially having some other projects that may materialize based on that leverage of the surtax dollars. We are always applying for additional grant funding, and we do have several grants that we have applied for, but we're pending response for award from the federal government. Once those are awarded, you'll see, like Donna said, some potential additional projects coming out of transit that will be DBE funded.
Hello, I just wanted to add something. I'm piggybacking too. I just want to let everyone know this is just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of us giving you a forecast of projects that are coming in the future. As far as opportunities for DBE participation, I mentioned unintentional. A lot of those DBE opportunities were realized because DBE firms got involved in the process as far as attending those pre-bid meetings, sending primes their information. When those projects were advertised, primes think of that kind of stuff. And then you may do something that's not related to the scopes identified, but you'll find yourself on a team, maybe doing personnel or security guard or something related to a construction project because you establish a relationship with a prime contractor. So the prime has the flexibility and authority we just identify these opportunities. They can choose from any arena they want to fulfill a goal and exceed a goal. So just keep in mind that this is just the beginning of the process, that we identified those opportunities. We told you where to find those advertisements. Now it's time to just get out and get it. And you can create an opportunity for yourself if you just stay on it. Keep your eye on the prize, so to speak.
Thank you, James. I wanted to add one other, just one other tidbit for consideration. The goal that's forecasted for transit does seem smaller in comparison to the one for aviation, but the overall value of the contracts is something that should be considered. I think for all 41 contracts, we're looking at approximately $94 million. And so 6% of that is $6 million, whereas for North Perry, the anticipated value of the projects is $11.1 million. So that's a 23% goal of $11 million, which is $2.7 million. So it's still significant opportunities. Don't only look at the percentage, think about the overall opportunity. And that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you all. There's another question in the Q&A area. It comes from Cynthia Alexander. Are there any DBE goals for insurance and bonding?
Not at this level because we're doing the program goal. However, that opportunity could come into play once we're doing the individual project goals. Once the program goals that were rolled up to what we're discussing now, when they're solicited on an individual level by our purchasing division, then you'll see more opportunities. But at this point, there wasn't a goal. There's no project that Broward County had that was anticipated to be federally funded with DBE dollars for bonding or insurance services. But that service could be a part of one of the individual projects.
Great, thank you. That completes all of the questions that are in our Q&A area. We are reviewing the chat to make sure nothing was inadvertently placed there. And we have a hand up from one of our panelists. Go ahead, Oswaldo.
Yes, yes, this is Oswaldo. I just like to add that Broward County, through the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, does a lot of outreach. And you have to really communicate with this office or look at the website and identify different information that we have placed on the website. Make sure that you review the Periscope at least once a week so you can identify opportunities that Broward County will be advertising with Dbe Participation and any other small business participation. So we truly advocate for participation of small business in our good faith efforts to grow our community. But it's up to you also to do your homework and do your own research and communicate with this office if you have questions. If you're not certified, to make sure you become a certified company, or at least you get information on the requirements to become a DBE certified business. Whether you are in Broward County or in another county, you can still be certified. Maybe not by Broward County, but by other counties. But let me tell you, your DBE certification, it works locally, statewide, and even nationally. So make sure that you have that information so you're able to compete as a DBE on all these projects that we're proposing to solicit during the triennial period, and other upcoming projects that are not listed but might become available eventually, where you can where you might have some opportunities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Oswaldo. I think there may be a question in the chat. Pam, would you like to address it to the panelists?
Yeah, good afternoon. Daniel it was just saying it's along the same lines. He just wanted to know if there was any contract work in any of these upcoming projects coming up that might be needed.
Gasser, your concrete was hot mix concrete, is that correct? I think he's asking about concrete work.
Hot mix
Asphalt, that's right. Any concrete work?
No, not on.
Okay.
Not on.
Okay, thank you. We did have one additional comment added to the Q&A from Victor Harris. Speaking of Periscope, other counties send out solicitation notifications based on NAICS codes as an alert of proposals that hit the street. Is Broward County willing to do something similar like Hillsborough County and Orange County currently do?
Let me get back to you with that answer. I am aware that at one point in time, our purchasing division did do it. I'm not entirely sure if it's still being done, but if you leave your email address in the chat, I will definitely follow up and see what the status is with that.
Great. Thank you, Donna Ann. That concludes all of the questions that we have in Q&A and the chat.
If I could, I would like to pose a question to the attendees. I realize that there is, of course, an interest in the projects, but if you could, I don't know, type in me or yes, or something along those lines, how many of you are DBEs, are currently DBE certified that are present in the meeting? And while that answer is coming up, I wanted to ask, for those of you that are DBE certified, are there any issues that you're experiencing within the program that you feel is causing the playing field to not be as leveled for you? We're also interested in those comments, not just questions, but your feedback as well. I'm seeing that we do definitely have a couple of firms. So I'll ask, are there any, okay. I'll give it a second, but if you would in the chat, please let us know. And then also, thank you, Vanetta, on your screen is a link and a QR code that will enable you to provide us with feedback. I see your comment, Mr. Harris. Please go ahead and if you would, through either the SurveyMonkey link that's on the screen right now, or through the QR code that's also on the screen, that will provide you with a medium through which you can provide your feedback to that question that I just asked. Any obstacles, any hurdles, anything that's preventing you from being able to participate, anything in the process that you think is making it particularly cumbersome or difficult, that is also information that we would like to know. And I will wait for those to come in. Of course, it doesn't have to be right now. I did see one comment that said, I guess they would rather a more personal conversation or a face-to-face one-on-one conversation. I saw a couple of comments that flew by that said we're not certified, but that we are interested in getting certified. Definitely go ahead and use that link and let us know if you are located in Broward County. And I emphasize that the program is not geographic based. However, Broward County and specifically the Office of Economic and Small Business Development are one of the certifiers within the Florida Unified Certification Program. So we can certify firms through the application process that meet the requirements under the DBE program. Miami-Dade is also a participating member. So if you're located there, you can also apply through Miami-Dade County, and there's several other counties in the state of Florida that are certifiers. Thank you, Ms. Alexander. So I'm seeing a couple of responses saying we are certified. Thank you, Pamela. And if you would just please, we really do appreciate your feedback. It is considered and it's actually included as a part of our submittal when we do submit our proposed goals, our final packages to the FTA and the FAA. So if you would use that link and the QR code and provide us with any information. That's all for me, Vanetta. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna Ann. Just want to note that our final stakeholder meeting is this coming Friday, July 15th at 11 a.m. If you would like to participate again, we welcome you, or you can help us out by spreading the word. Next, all of our upcoming events. Again, Friday, July 15th at 11 a.m., the final stakeholder meeting for our triennial DBE goal setting process. Also on Friday, July 15th at 4 p.m., FLA Live Arena CBE Meet and Greet at FLA Live, Wednesday, July 20th at 11 a.m. You're certified now what? And Thursday, July 21st at 12:30 p.m. SOAR Loan Fund FAQs virtual workshop. You can get more details on our upcoming events at broward.org/econdev/pages/events.aspx, or just go to our website. You can also register at bcoesbd.eventbrite.com. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.